I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Bill Corcoran Sr., President and owner of Corcoran Printing. What's up, podcast, episode 40, Bill Corcoran Sr. Welcome to the On the Stacks podcast, Dad. How are you?
Hey, good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's about time, right?
Right.
40 episodes in.
40, yeah.
Yeah, and now you're on. So the family business, Corcoran Printing, we are celebrating our 80th anniversary this year in business, and I thought it would be fitting to have my dad on the podcast to share a little of his story personally and background on him and how he got into the printing business and a little bit of the company history. So before we talk about the history of Corcoran Printing, tell me what you did before you got into printing.
So my first real full-time job, I was a garage door installer for Rainier Doors in the Wilkes-barre area. And I worked a little bit part-time with my dad in the print shop in the late 70s.
So that was your first job out of high school?
Yeah.
And what did you think you were going to do at that point? I mean,
I had no idea. I knew I wanted to get into business, but I didn't know how. So I started out with that job as a garage door installer. And then my dad had the printing business on the side kind of for a long time. And so I started helping him a little bit part-time, and I started to learn, and I liked it.
So what was it that made you jump from installing garage doors to working at Corcoran Printing in the family business?
Well, interest rates were 18%. Construction was going down, and I got laid off. And when I got laid off, it was devastating. After 2 or 3 years in the job, I really was going broke because I wasn't able to collect a lot of unemployment, and I was really hurting financially. And at that point, my dad said, well, look at it as an opportunity. And I said, geez, what do you mean? He said, well, we could build the business. He goes, you want to be in business? We could build the business, being that you have more time now. So I worked for a few more years, and about 5 or 6 years in, I was still only making about $5 or $6 an hour, and I was still broke, working 60 hours a week. And I went to my dad, and I said, Dad, when could the company afford to pay me more money? And he said, well, not yet. He said, if you want to make more money, he said, why don't you go out and sell? And I said, well, geez, I don't know how to sell. And he looked at me and he says, you'll learn. And he turned around and walked away. So that was like an inflection point for me, because I thought after he said that, like, geez, if I want to make more money, the company can't afford to pay me more. Like, I'm all on my own. I got to do everything to, build up finance, build up the business, and to make more money. And then I started to sell, and we started to build the business from there.
So what year was it that you started with your dad?
1978.
1978.
Yeah.
What's the math on that?
42 years.
42 years. Wow. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So in the early days, besides printing, was there anything else that you did?
Yeah. In 1981, I read a book on how to be a successful real estate investor. And I bought my first double block investment property for $16,500. Interest rates back then were 18%. So there wasn't too many buyers. And it sounds crazy because nowadays you could borrow money for 3? Well, I borrowed my first mortgage, all borrowed money. I had no down payment. I had no money. I borrowed everything, and I financed it at 18%. And then a few years went by, and I bought another one, and I bought another one, and I got up to 10 units. All on borrowed money, all using the sweat equity and all the work I put into one to the next. Never used any of my own money because I didn't have any of my own money. It just used all the money in the equity and parlayed it into another one and another one.
So besides that book that you read on the real estate, I mean, was there anything else that helped you in real estate? You kind of self-taught yourself the hard way?
Yeah. I learned the hard way, School of Hard Knocks. I had a couple of friends that taught me some basic carpentry. We did a lot of painting, painted interior, exterior, and just kind of learned as I went along. Learned how to put siding on myself and a little bit of everything.
So you're doing a little bit of the real estate. You have the investment properties. Is there anything else that your dad maybe taught you in the beginning, the early days, working for the printing company?
Basic business, selling. I took some courses myself, read some books about sales, and my dad taught me a lot of the printing technology and a lot of basic accounting. He had a degree in accounting from Wilkes. So he taught me balance sheet, how to read a profit and loss, what is total cost of goods, how to do banking, how to analyze the finances and make ends meet.
So let's now shift gears a little bit and kind of talk a little bit about the history of Corcoran Printing.
Okay. All right.
Let's take it back all the way to 1940.
All right. So 1940, my grandfather, Patrick Corcoran, was a school teacher who taught English and Latin at Plains Junior High. Had 6 kids, and he started tinkering around with a small press in his basement and printing bingo cards and business cards and prayer cards. His brother was a funeral director, Corcoran Funeral Home. So they had the connection with the funeral directors, and he did a lot of prayer cards back in the 40s and 50s. In the 50s, 4 of the sons all learned how to print through high school, college, military. All 4 were in different branches of the military, and they all took turns helping their dad print in the basement. And back then it was 1 card at a time, and they all had a part in the business. And also their cousins also came and saw what was going on in the basement of the family home. And it kind of multiplied from there, where everybody got interested.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like in the 50s.
So his son, Tom, your dad, my grandfather, he was taught by his dad.
Yeah.
And do you have any memory with your grandfather, Patrick, from when you were young?
Just a little, because he passed away when I was 5. But my mom used to take me down the basement because we lived on the other side of the double block. My mom would take me down there and ask Grandpa to babysit me while she went out shopping. So that was my first real in-shop experience at age like 3 and 4 and 5 years old, that I would watch the press run, watch Grandpa print 1 card at a time, watch them set type, which was back then lead letters 1 at a time. There was no computers, obviously. So my memories of that were kind of interesting. And when they set the type with lead, they had to hold it up to a mirror to proofread it because everything was backwards. So that's another long story. But I watched him do that stuff in when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And I have just a few memories of him, and he used to, take me and, show me things.
Yeah. So you also, in the photos that we took today, sitting on the stacks, you brought these 2 paintings that you had hanging at home.
Oh, yeah.
And what is the significance with these 2 paintings?
So Patrick Corcoran, the founder of the company, at age 16, in the year 1914, painted 2 oil on canvas paintings of where he used to go fishing with his dad in the Thornhurst area on the Lehigh River. And he painted them at age 16, and he wrote his name and the year 1914 on a rock in the corner of each picture. So the way that we look at it is that he, all the way back then, was putting images on a background or a paper. In this case, it was oil on canvas. And then he ended up starting a printing company. And that's what we do today. We put images on paper. Kind of interesting.
So in 1914, he was painting at the age of 16. So he was born in 1898.
1898, yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the products kind of going through the years. So, my great-grandfather, your grandfather, what were some of the products that they first started out printing in the 40s and 50s?
So the products then were prayer cards, bingo cards, business cards, tickets, and wedding invitations. And in the 60s, it was in the home, in the basement of the home, and there would be brides and wedding invitations coming with their mom and their grandmother to the basement. And there was a little sign in the front yard that said printing, and they would come to order their wedding invitations right in the shop, in the basement, in a room no bigger than 10 by 20. And there was sometimes cars lined up on a Saturday where there'd be 2 or 3 customers all waiting to get in to get their wedding invitations printed at Corcoran Printing. And that was the 60s.
Okay. And then what?
Then in the 70s, after Patrick Corcoran, the founder, died in 63, the youngest son, Joe, was still at home. He was only 19 or 20. He took over the business until the early 70s. And he ran it for a number of years. And then he decided to get a job as a mailman. So my dad then stepped back in and actually bought the company from his brother for $1.
For $1.
For $1. And I have the receipt. So my dad started in the early 70s, and he was doing accounting, and he was doing printing on the side. And he, wanted to make extra money to support the family. So he started to do different type of products, and technology was getting just started. So he would do things like letterheads and then envelopes. And he even did some like brochures back in the day in the 70s. And I got involved in the business in the late 70s, early 80s. And we were located right downtown on the corner of North and North Main Street across from King's College. And my dad bought the existing old printer that was there called Anselmi Press. And we started to develop a large walk-in trade being downtown on the corner. And we did a lot of resumes. Resumes was the big thing back in the 80s. In addition to that, we had a customer who was a resume service. Now, this is all before computers back in the 80s. So his customers would tell him verbally what their experience was. He would handwrite the resumes and then drop off 5 or 10 a week. And we had a computer when nobody else did. We would typeset them and run off 50 copies, and he would drop off 5 or 10 a week. So resumes was a big product in the 80s. And then we started to get into quick printing. And quick printing then became a good business. But the problem is that the Office Maxes and the Staples of the world started to come into play across the country, and they started to come into and get the market share and underbid everybody because they were the big box stores. So in the late 80s, early 90s, we took the exact opposite direction. And we invested in our first large printing press and decided to get into high quality printing instead of just the easy down and dirty stuff, quick printing. And in the 90s, we started to do stuff like brochures and catalogs and direct mailers and all kinds of high-end corporate printing in the 90s, and then started to get into mailing a little bit in the 90s too.
So when you first started in the family business, what was your role? What did you do? What did you start off doing?
What didn't I do? So I went out and sold the job with a suit and tie on, and build the relationships. And then I would come back and spend days and dress down and do everything from order the paper, typeset a little bit, paste up. There was no real sophistication then. Shoot the film back when there was film. Then the film contacted the plate and made the plates, ran the press, cut the jobs, folded the jobs, and then ended up delivering the jobs most of the time. And when it was just my dad, my sister, and myself, and maybe one part-time employee back in the 90s.
So how did you grow the business?
Selling. Did a lot of cold calling.
With all that sales training you got, right?
Yeah. He said, you'll learn.
You'll learn. So
I did. So I taught myself how to sell. School of Hard Knocks. Went out and got some good customers, and then started building up in the 90s. And I officially purchased the company from my dad in 1995. And that was a buy-sell agreement with him as the seller, and that was his retirement package.
What were some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the printing industry over the years from the time you started till now?
Well, the biggest changes, a couple things. Technology, obviously. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was no technology. There was none. Everything was done by hand. Each letter was by hand. Then computers came along in our industry in the 80s, and we learned how to make film, shoot film, do color separations, contact plates. And then also what I've seen is lately the direct sales model starting to change, where because of the internet, in a good way, we've capitalized on customers coming to us because the sales model is now changing.
And, back in the day, I mean, you guys, I feel like if I don't even know how it was possible to even sell back in the day. I mean, what'd you do? Like you ran around and called from payphones when you went to go visit customers, or
there was no cell phones.
Yeah. What did you have to do?
Just knock on doors and take some samples, rely on who you knew possibly to get a referral to get in to see either the marketing person or the purchasing agent. And it was all face-to-face, and it was all cold calling and travel, and there was no cell phones yet.
Do you have maybe one or two good sales success stories of getting a customer, maybe either locally or out of town? Any cool, fun, good sales stories?
Oh, let's see. I had a friend who worked for us part-time, and he picked up a magazine in Leo Mattis' store on Public Square and looked for big companies in New York. And he found a big publisher, and he called on him. And I'll never forget, it was a Friday afternoon at 2:00. And the guy in New York took him up on, if you want to come see me right now.
At 2:00 on a Friday.
2:00 on a Friday. And he did. He left and he drove to New York City, and on a Friday afternoon, and he landed one of the biggest accounts we ever had. And it was amazing for him to do that on a Friday afternoon at 2:00. That was a pretty interesting scenario.
What year was that?
That was around 1993, 94, 95, somewhere in that era.
So he just picked up the phone, cold called this big place in New York City, and just the guy called him out on it and said, come here right now. And they were a big magazine publisher. So if you remember, there used to be in magazines blow-in postcards where they're in your way when you're trying to turn the page. And that's what we did for that big publisher, because they didn't fool around with the cards. And as it turns out, years later, that same person at the big publisher ran into a major problem where he called one Friday morning and said to us on the phone at 9:00 on a Friday, I'm in big trouble and I'm going to lose my job today. And we said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I forgot to order these cards, and I've done it before, and they warned me. They says, if this happens again, you're fired. He goes, so if you guys can't help me out, he said, I'm losing my job today. So I got on the phone with them, and I said, what do you need? He said, I need 60,000 two-color, two-side postcards on your dock at 4:00. Otherwise, my job's history. And we got it done for him. And he had a courier pick it up, and he sent us a nice testimonial letter afterwards that said, Corcoran Printing will never let you down. That's really cool. So the building that we're in now, we've been here for about 20 years. Talk about the transition from the old building to this new building, and what were the changes going from the old place to here, maybe some new equipment. What happened?
So the old place was basically ancient and almost like a dungeon. It was dark and dingy, and it wasn't lit very well, and all the machines were antiquated. So in the year 2000, actually 1999, I started planning it. In the year 2000, we moved into this facility, and I bet the farm on this. I went all out, and I bought the building. I invested in our first 5-color press, state-of-the-art modern cutters and folders, and I bet the farm. And it was do or die. And I guess I was about 35, 40 years old at the time. And we expanded into this building, and we moved in one weekend. All the employees and all, we grouped together. We had a good mover, and we got everything moved over the weekend. And 8:00 Monday morning, we were back in operation. It was almost unbelievable. We pulled it off, but no customer ever even noticed. No jobs were delayed, and we never skipped a beat. And we were up and running Monday morning.
Was there anything you were afraid of going wrong during that? I mean, I know a lot of people say that, moving your business is, you basically can go out of business if you move.
Yeah, we had it well planned, and I bought the building and had to do a lot of renovations beforehand, including new heat and air conditioning. But with all the employees pitching in and a good mover, everything went well as could be expected, and we were up and running on Monday morning.
Didn't miss a beat.
Didn't miss a beat.
Wow. And so now, year 2000, we're in this new building that we're in right now. Where do you go from there?
Let's see, year 2000. So with the new 5-color press, we had more capability. We started to attract new customers through direct sales. We brought in a lot of new business and different products. We started to specialize in newsletters and did a lot of direct mail. a lot of brochures, a lot more color work, a lot more volume. We had basically 5 times the space that we had previously, and business continued to grow and grow and grow. And in the year 2005, we added another large 4-color Heidelberg press, and business grew even more. We added more mail equipment, and business was good, very good for several years.
What were some of the products that we did then?
A lot of direct mail, a lot of newsletters, a lot of catalogs, and a lot of clients in New York. We were able to underbid the New York and New Jersey printers because of our cost of living here is much less and our cost of overhead is much less. So we were able to attract a lot of New York City clients for bigger volume jobs, big long runs, 100,000, 500,000 of different types of pieces. And the volume just kept growing and growing.
So what year was it that we launched the website? Isn't there also another story? Didn't we thought we were going to launch the website and maybe compete with some online printers? Or
Yeah, so we launched our website in the year 2000 or 2001, and we promoted it with a postcard. And we mailed it out to a lot of New York City, New Jersey recipients. And the one, I'll never forget, a client who was a broker designer in New York City got the postcard, and our offer was, hey, we'll give you free shipping on our first order. And she called and took us up on it, and we became her printer of choice. And over a span of 2001 till now, she has spent with us $1 million over that time based on that one postcard from when we first launched our website.
And what did that cost us in the shipping?
I think $48.
So $48 yielded what?
$1 million. $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really cool story. So, but I mean, as far as like the website, I mean, the year 2000 or 2001, I mean, internet was like, no one really knew much about it. I mean,
right. Yeah.
There probably really weren't a whole lot of other big competitors like there are nowadays on the web. I mean, did that scare you at all?
There was starting to be some competition, and there were companies that were basically lowering the pricing to basically what I call commoditize certain things like business cards and postcards, and they drove the pricing down to almost nothing. So I always took the exact opposite approach. Instead of trying to compete with somebody who's doing business cards for $15, we do double thick and triple thick and foil stamp business cards. And sometimes our orders are $500, $1,000 for an order of business cards. We always took the direct opposite approach of the cheap, mass-produced commodity type printers. We don't want to go there because they end up putting themselves out of business by having too cheap of a price. Mm-hmm. So we're a luxury printer. We're a high-quality printer.
So how did you learn, you talk about you've had to kind of shift and change gears a lot throughout your career. How did how did you make these decisions? How did you learn all this knowledge?
A long time ago, I read a quote by, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson, that said, everyone is my superior in some way, and in that I learn. So I've learned from everybody, first with my dad, my uncles. I've learned from employees. I've hired people that were much more experienced and much smarter than me, and I was able to learn more about the industry from people. And then I also joined a peer group through the Wilkes University and was a member of a peer group for 10 years where 8 CEOs would get together and talk about problems, challenges, strategies. I did that. And I also did a lot of reading. I read a lot of books. One of the best books I ever read, and I'd highly recommend, is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've learned a lot on how to be a leader based on that. And Warren Buffett, who is, as everyone knows, one of the world's most successful investors, he endorses that book and that course the same way I do. It's one of the best courses. He attributes most of his success to Dale Carnegie training. And he took the course to get over the fear of public speaking. And I really enjoyed it. And I've sent several employees through the course, and it's really benefited me throughout my lifetime.
That's good. Is there any other books that you've read that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I've read some other books, such as Peter Lynch, from Fidelity on investing. Before we started our 401k, I wanted to learn about the market. So in 1997, we started a 401k program for our employees, and I'm in the 401k alongside all the employees. And I've had some success with investing over the years. Peter Lynch's motto was to invest in what you know. And so in around 2006, my favorite beer became Sam Adams. And I really knew that beer real well. And
Mostly because you drank it.
Mostly because I drank it, and I still do. And I bought stock in Sam Adams at $33 a share in 2006. And if you check out what it's at now, we'll both cheer to the price now.
Yeah.
So that was a big plus. Warren Buffett books I've read, and I also read a book that we published for a customer, Andrew Cornell from Cornell Ironworks. He wrote a book called Connection, and we printed 3 issues of it. And basically, the book is about a family business. He was 5th generation, and the book is a really good book about how to treat people, how to deal with customers, how to grow a business. And I really learned a lot from Andrew and from the book, and it was a local book, and it was very good.
Yeah. So back to the 401k and you getting into investing. What year did you start investing? How old were you, and what made you start investing? Like what was the idea?
Well, I guess I was around 35 years old. I think at that point I had just bought the company from my dad, and I had no money, basically except $2,500 personally. And I had some real estate and such, but there was no cash. There was equity. So my dad and my stepfather both told me that I should start saving for retirement. And I disagreed at the time and said, nah, I'm a businessman now. I'm going to have a business that's going to make lots of money, and I don't have to worry about saving. It'll just all be there. Well, they said, well, what if it's not? My dad said, what if it's not there when you go to retire? So I thought for a while, and I took their advice, and I took my $2,500 in cash, and I invested it in my first mutual fund. And that was before we started the 401k. And when I did, I kind of started to learn. I kind of liked the idea of what I was learning and how to make money, and then how to have your money make money for you. And I was excited to be able to provide a 401k to our employees, which I'm in myself. And in seeing the power of compounding and having your money work for you, I take pride in the fact that our employees are accumulating significant amounts of money. And it's a good feeling, and it's a great thing to do that for your employees.
Yeah. So speaking of talking about 401ks, I feel like a lot of people nowadays, my age, some may not understand. So do you want to share a little bit more about your knowledge of investing in 401ks and how and why it's important for somebody who, I'm 31 years old. You didn't start investing till you were 35.
Right.
I personally started investing by the age of 18 with a little bit of your help. And then, my first job out of college working for Verizon, of course, they had a big 401k. And obviously this was 8 years ago. So, it was a little bit easier to learn and navigate those things. But I feel like a lot of people my age don't know enough about and don't take it seriously enough. Is there any advice you can give to people, say my age or younger, or even a little bit older, that just don't know about investing? And, how does one get started?
Well, that's a good question. Most people don't, and I have a lot of friends that I have helped get their 401k on a better track besides just our team of employees here. So to oversimplify it, I could state it in simple terms that nowadays with technology, and if you have a computer or a cell phone, you just go to Yahoo Finance, you type in the ticker symbol of your mutual fund, whatever company you work for, and you look down to where it says performance. And where it says performance, you click on it, and if you're not making at least 8 to 10%, because that's the S&P average, then you're in the wrong mutual funds. A lot of companies I find out there through friends that I have, nobody really educates their employees as much. And sometimes the employees don't really know where to go. So basically, to oversimplify, it could all be done online now on Yahoo Finance. You click on there, you look around, you look at your mutual funds, and you see how they compare to the S&P. And anybody who's in their early 30s or 40s, I highly encourage them to take advantage of the 401k and get the match. If your employer gives you a 3% match, you're getting free money every payday. So if you're putting away $20 and your employer is matching at $20, you just doubled your money. You doubled your money on payday. And then it starts to earn money for you. Then your money goes to work for you.
So back to your dad, and I know your dad kind of encouraged you a little bit to invest and possibly have multiple sources of income in case the printing business didn't work out.
Right.
What would you say is the best advice, whether it's one thing or two things that your dad gave you, when you were younger?
So he basically encouraged me to do things to have a couple streams of revenue, if I'll call it that. So he said one of the mistakes he made was never buying that first double block that he was going to buy, but then they decided to buy a single home. And had he bought a double block, he would have had that rental income. So for an example, my first double block that I lived in, the rent on the other half paid my mortgage. So real estate was good to me. It was a lot of hard work in the beginning, a lot of sweat equity, fixing up, painting, and doing all the things that you have to do as a landlord. But it pays off in the long run, and I'm very happy I did it. And I went on to buy my first commercial building 20 years ago, the building we're in now, and it was one of the best investments I ever made. And that all came from my dad encouraging me to not just focus on the printing, but give that 90% of my focus, but also have a revenue stream to build retirement, which I did.
That's good. What, who or what have have contributed to let's say your success in business?
Well, most of it goes to the employees.
Besides hiring me.
Oh, yeah. All right. So we know that, right?
Yeah.
So I think the success has been hiring great people. We have great people that we started to hire in the years 2000 early, people with a lot more experience. Our staff is hardworking, they're dedicated, they're quality conscious, and they're just good people. The biggest and most popular comment I get from customers is not just the quality of our work, but they say to me, Bill, you really have really great people. And I say, thank you. So I give a lot of credit to our staff, to our team, some of which have been with us over 15 and some 20 years. Also, my wife, Ruth, and stepson, Greg, with Corcoran Communications, they have handled our content marketing for a number of years and have really got us ranked on Google. So if you go on Google and type in cigar band printing, Corcoran Printing comes up number one, and we come up in the top 2 or 3 for many other products, such as double thick business cards, custom boxes, luxury brand tags, cosmetic tags, all types of different products that we rank that high on Google. And we even got the opportunity to do the diplomas for the United States Secret Service years ago. And that was quite exciting to have an honor to do that. And recently we've, because of our ranking on Google, we have been able to acquire customers in Barbados. We have some customers in Bahamas, Denmark. We shipped an order last year to Zimbabwe, Africa for cigar bands, and they find us all on Google. So it's really interesting and exciting how the sales model has changed, and our strategy, although we still do cold calls and we still have many, many, many local regional customers, we still do envelopes and letterheads and business cards and all the regular types of business forms, but the packaging, the luxury packaging that we do, and with our presence online, we're really bringing in, and people are coming to us for very high quality, very specialized work. And we got great people here that could do the products, and it's really working for us really quite well, as you know.
Yeah, obviously. And back to the employees, is there anything else, like when you talked about having great employees, Is there anything else that may have incentivized employees, or anything else that has helped the employees to say, like, I really want to do a good job here?
Yeah, there is another aspect of it. So Andrew Cornell from Cornell Ironworks shared with me his gain-sharing business model when we printed the document back in the late 90s. And basically, he told me, just take it and run with it, put your company name in and offer it to your employees if you want, because it works. So we did. And the gain-sharing business model is simply, as the profits increase, the company shares the gain with the employees. And that has given everyone here a different outlook on doing the best they could, top quality, and conserving the resources and time as opposed to wasting. And that has really served us well over the last 20 years. As the industry has been shrinking, it's been a little bit tougher to make a profit, and everybody knows that. But the gain-sharing business model has really, really worked for us. It shares the profit with the employees.
And full disclosure, this is totally separate from our 401k plan, right? I mean, so just so people that are listening understand that the gain-sharing plan is a program that employees, everyone does well, and that the what do you say, the rising tide raises all boats kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's totally separate from 401k, and just want to clarify that. So, where, obviously over the last, I've been here in the business now for 8 years, and, I've seen significant changes in the industry from the day that I started. And, you touched a little bit on some of the high quality packaging that we're doing now. Where do you see the future of the business?
So the industry, in a negative way, is shrinking. It has become commoditized for postcards and business cards, the simple stuff. Anybody could do it. It has also become very competitive. The industry is also shrinking in a way that, for example, a product like newsletters, we had a New York City client that used to do 35,000 newsletters every single month, and it's down to 5,000 now. So the shrinkage there is tremendous because it gets emailed out. So we've adapted, and we'll continue to adapt. Our strategy is to be the luxury packaging printer of choice. And when you think about packaging, everything you buy, everything you touch, from toothpaste to soap to whatever, it all has printing on it. And that I don't foresee as going away, at least in the next 20 years. So we have adapted, everything from prayer cards to resumes to direct mail. And now we're into luxury packaging printing. And of course, we still do all the rest of the items. But the future for us here at Corcoran Printing is in packaging, high quality packaging. And we get a lot of comments from customers that say, there's nobody around like you anymore that does this stuff. So we're glad we found you.
Yeah. And we get customers from all over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
Where at?
We have customers in Australia, Denmark, Barbados, Bahamas, Africa. And they're coming to us and saying, we saw your website. We saw what you do. Give us a quote on this.
So I started recently, I put out on social media to get a listeners' questions. So I put out on social media, and I am accepting listeners' questions. And I told people on social media that if I used their question, that I would give them a little shout out during the interview. And they don't know that you're on the podcast as a guest, because I don't promote future guests. But today's question was submitted by Mike Yurcho. And Mike Yurcho's question is, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
That's a good question. It would be a toss-up, I think, between Mexico and Hawaii.
Yeah?
I like the drier climate of Mexico, and Hawaii is obviously beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be between those two.
Cool. So, talking about the area, when you were younger, I know you've mentioned to me, many times about some of your friends maybe moving away from this area, and then either moving back, or maybe some never came back. But, did you ever see yourself ever moving out of this area? And why did you stay here?
Well, I think it's what you make of it. So when I was young, I had a lot of friends who moved out of the area because they said, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. There's nothing in this town. It's backwards. And I disagree. I believe that life and business is what you make of it. And I've seen a lot of those friends leave the area, and some did very well, but most of them are back because this area is a great area. I love Northeast PA. I never thought about leaving. I never will. It's a great area, and we have a lower cost of living here, which is a big benefit. So I love it here, and I'm glad that I stayed.
What would you say is your favorite thing about NEPA?
Good climate, close to a lot of things. If you want to go to New York, you're 2 hours. You want to go to Philly, you're 2 hours. Atlantic City, you're 2.5 hours. Good airports, good easy travel, great people, great food in the area, everything from pizza to good restaurants, low cost of living. Our house here, you'd pay 3 times as much in Philadelphia or in New York or anywhere across the country. So we live a lot cheaper here and could enjoy life more because we're not paying the high costs of the bigger cities.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh,
you said good food, so what's your favorite restaurant?
Well, I'll give Quark a shout out. My wife owned Quark for 10 years, and we still love it there. We like a lot of other restaurants locally too, but Quark is one of our favorites.
Yeah. If your dad was still alive today, what do you think he would have to say about your success?
Well, he would be excited that the business is in the 4th generation now. He would be excited about the move, the expansion, the technology, and he'd be excited that you got into the business and got the Philadelphia 76ers as a client your first month on the job. And he always said to me, his expression was, way to go, Quark. And if he was here right now, he'd say, you did good. Way to go, Quark.
The podcast we're 40 weeks in, and I never thought I would have a podcast, but I have to give you a little credit for playing a role in the podcast. And I know I've told the story once or twice, I think, on the podcast, but I just want to tell it again just for people that may not have listened to the episode that I told the story. So when was it? Back beginning of this year in January or February, we did a very large order for like 500,000 envelopes for a customer in New York City, and we store them here and we do fulfillment and we ship them out every week or every 2 weeks. And right when we first printed the order, they were all sitting here on the production floor. And my dad, and I walked into his office one day, and he looked at me. He said, "Hey," he goes, "How about that really cool order? Why don't you take a picture and maybe share it on social media?" And I looked at my dad with a funny face, and I said, like, "Dad, like, who the hell cares about envelopes? Like, there's nothing exciting about them, right?" And I think a lot of times, like, when you're in your own business, you look at your day-to-day things or products or whatever it is you sell, and you may not think it's as interesting as somebody from the outside. So, me being on the inside, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, well, that's boring. Like, who cares about envelopes? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, it's a lot of envelopes, and I guess it could kind of be exciting to somebody that
500,000.
Yeah, somebody that doesn't either know a lot about Corcoran Printing or about us and what we do here, and that we're capable of not only producing small orders of 500 envelopes, but also 500,000 envelopes. So, one day on a Saturday, I was here and I was walking through the press room, and I looked at them and I was like, what? I thought about when you asked me about it, and I'm like, I gotta do something, So I took one picture of me sitting on the envelopes with a funny little pose, like me falling over on the envelopes, and it got a lot of engagement on social media. When I shared the photo, I kind of told the story of that we fulfill them and things like that, and it was a little plug for us. And then I did like 1 or 2 more photos of me sitting on pallets of paper, and it just kept getting a ton of more engagement, to the point that people, for some reason, thought it was cool. And some people started commenting on the photos saying like, "Hey, I want to come in and take a photo on," people started saying like, "on the stacks." And by the way, we don't call them stacks. They're just pallets of paper to us. I don't think I've ever heard them referred to as stacks, right? I mean, have you?
Yeah, never.
So the word "on the stacks" then came out a few weeks later. And it just started getting more engagement to the point that finally, Mark, an old manager of mine at Verizon, he messaged me and was like, hey, how about we catch up? I haven't seen you in years. I'll come in. I'll get a photo with you on dem stacks is what he says, the famous quote. And Mark came in. We took one photo, me and him. We went out to lunch after. And then once I posted that photo with a person that was not just myself, and there was somebody actually sitting on the stacks, and I posted and shared and said, hey, here's Mark, here's what he does, and he's a really great guy. People just flooded my inbox saying like, hey, I want to come do that. I want to come do that. And then sure enough, I had all these people lined up to come in and just take a photo with me on the stacks. And then Darren Elias got involved and started, the photographer came in, he started taking the photos. So then it kind of took it to the next level. And, I was sharing them like almost once a week, I think. And this was back this was a year and a half ago, more than a year and a half ago when it was just photos. And then fast forward to the beginning of this year, everyone kept saying like, hey, Bill, like this is really cool what you're doing. Like you have these people come in, you take photos, you share 5 photos and you just put like 3 sentences of what they do. But like people are like, we really want to know their stories and what else these people are doing. So people started saying like, hey, why don't you do a podcast or a video series or something? And then one day I was like, I think a podcast would be probably the easiest thing to do. And for people to be able to share their stories and their experiences, their successes and some failures or whatever they want to share. And I just decided one night I was just going to buy the equipment and build a little podcast studio here in the Corcoran Printing building. So I just want to share that story again, just because my dad's on the podcast today, and little as he know, he knows, but that he had somewhat of a role of the creation of the On the Stacks podcast. So I just want to share that story again for those that might be listening today that maybe never heard the story.
Yeah, cool.
So before we wrap it up, is there anything else that I didn't ask you or that I should have asked you? Or is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap it up?
The future that we see is strong because we're developing more and more clients in a specialty luxury brand packaging. And the company's been in business now for 80 years, and I think it's going to be around for a long time going forward.
Where can someone learn more about Corcoran Printing?
Well, geez, we're all over the place thanks to Bill Jr. here. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We have over 7,000 followers on Instagram. We have a couple good YouTube videos for the designers out there in the audience that want to learn how to prep a file. Go to corcoranprinting.com. You can see our samples of all the types of different cigar labels we do, all the jewelry tags we do, and all the social medias are there. And everywhere you look, I think you'll find us. Go on Google and type in cigar band printing, and you'll see Corcoran Printing come up number 1. So we're not hard to find. We're out there.
Yeah. So one last question. What advice would you give me going forward?
Work hard, be confident, be yourself, and be honest.
All right. Well, that about does it. I want to give a little cheers to Corcoran Printing 80th anniversary.
Cheers.
Cheers. On the Stacks podcast, Corcoran Printing, Bill Corcoran Sr. Thanks for joining me, Dad.
All right. You got it.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag #OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.